He publicly humiliated poor old woman on wedding day, not knowing she was the bride's billionaire mother. Hello family, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe, and let's know where you are watching the story from in the comment section. Get her out of here! Jason's voice cut through the wedding music like a blade. Guests gasped as they turned to see him pointing toward an old woman in worn sneakers and a faded sweater, clutching a small wrapped gift. She's ruining everything. This is a wedding, not a homeless shelter, he snapped, his face twisted with disgust. The old woman didn't fight back. She didn't argue. She just lowered her eyes, turned slowly, and walked away as whispers rippled through the crowd. Melissa's chest tightened. That wasn't just some stranger Jason had shamed in front of everyone. That was her mother. No one there knew the truth yet. No one knew that the woman Jason had just humiliated would be the one to turn this wedding upside down. But to understand how it all came to this, you need to know what kind of man Jason really was, and why Melissa never saw it coming. Jason Miller looked perfect on the outside. He had the polished smile, the height, the smooth talk. He moved through life like someone born for expensive suits and champagne toasts. But underneath all that charm was a man drowning in lies. His car was leased, his company barely existed, and his pockets were as empty as his promises. What he did have, though, was a gift for performance. He could spin a story so convincing, people never thought to look deeper. And Melissa Carter was his best audience yet. Melissa wasn't flashy. She lived quietly, poured herself into her non-profit for foster kids, and drove the same beat-up Toyota she'd had since college. People thought she was modest. They thought she didn't have much. Even Jason thought so. What he didn't know, what Melissa never talked about, was the name she carried. A name with more weight and wealth behind it than he could imagine. But Melissa kept that part of her life hidden. She thought she was finally loved for who she was, not what she had. She thought Jason's admiration was genuine. She had no idea he'd chosen her for reasons that had nothing to do with love. They first crossed paths 2 years earlier at a charity dinner in Los Angeles. Melissa had been laughing with volunteers, her natural warmth drawing people in when Jason spotted her from across the room. She looked approachable, soft, trusting, the perfect target. He made his move, leaning in with a drink in hand, and a line practiced to sound spontaneous. "You must be tired," he said. Melissa blinked, a little caught off guard. "Tired?" "Yeah," Jason smiled, "carrying all that light around. It must weigh you down." Melissa laughed, not because the line was good, but because it was so unexpected. And that laugh gave Jason his opening. From then on, he played his role flawlessly. He painted himself as a man who had worked his way up from nothing, sleeping in his car, scraping by until he built a business. Melissa, who admired resilience and grit more than wealth or titles, believed every word. Jason's lies were exactly what she wanted to hear. Now, with the wedding only weeks away, Melissa was lost in dreams of forever. But Jason was watching every detail like a hawk, not out of love, but calculation. Every guest, every lower, every photograph mattered, not because he cared about her happiness, but because he cared about how the world would see him. One night, as Melissa went over the seating chart, Jason leaned over her shoulder. "Do we really need this many people? Weddings should be curated, not cluttered." Melissa looked up, a little confused. "They're family and friends, Jason. These are people who matter." Jason tapped his pen against the page. "Your mom's not on here yet. Was that on purpose?" Melissa's stomach flipped. "No, I just forgot to add her. She's coming." Jason forced a smile. "Of course. Just making sure." But in his mind, he'd already decided. Evelyn Carter did not belong in the world he was building for himself. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. The wedding planning moved forward with an energy that felt more like business negotiations than romance. Jason inspected every detail like a man reviewing contracts instead of flowers and centerpieces. He had an opinion on everything, and not just an opinion, a demand. "This menu feels cheap," he said one afternoon as they sat across from the caterer. "I don't want chicken thighs. This is a wedding, not a school cafeteria." The caterer shifted nervously, glancing at Melissa. Before she could speak, Jason added, "And these desserts? Too basic. Nobody's impressed by cupcakes anymore." Melissa gave him a gentle look. "Jason, it's not about impressing people. It's about celebrating." Jason leaned back, arms crossed. "If people aren't impressed, then what's the point?" Melissa fell silent. It wasn't the first time he had dismissed something that mattered to her. Still, she told herself it was just nerves, the pressure of pulling off a big event. She wanted to believe that after the wedding things would calm down, and the Jason she fell in love with would come back. But Jason's mask was slipping. And nowhere did it slip more than when her mother's name came up again. One evening, Melissa sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open, scrolling through RSVPs. Jason walked in with a glass of whiskey, leaned over her shoulder and pointed at the screen. "She confirmed?" he asked, his tone sharp. Melissa looked at him. "Who?" "Your mom, Evelyn. She's actually coming." Melissa frowned. "Of course she is. She's my mother." Jason chuckled under his breath. "Yeah, but do you think she'll fit in? I mean, you know how these events are. Everyone's dressed to the nines, pictures everywhere, social media. She might feel out of place." Melissa stared at him, her jaw tightening. "Jason, I don't care if she wears her old sweater. She belongs there more than anyone." Jason tried to soften his voice. "I'm just thinking about you. I don't want you embarrassed on your big day." Melissa pushed her laptop shut. "The only thing embarrassing is you saying that." Jason's jaw flexed, but he smiled like nothing had happened. All right, don't bite my head off. I just want the day to be perfect." Melissa walked away, but inside her, something stirred. The way he talked about her mum wasn't just casual concern, it was judgment. Cold, sharp judgment. Meanwhile, Evelyn was preparing in her own way. Her home smelled faintly of brewed coffee and old books. She stood by her small dresser, looking at herself in the mirror. Her hair had more silver than before, her face carried the lines of wisdom and grief, but her eyes were steady. On the bed lay the dress she had chosen, a simple navy gown, not new, but neat. Beside it, a small box tied with ribbon. Inside was her gift for Melissa, a pendant her late husband had given her years ago, one she had saved to pass down. Her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, stopped by that evening with a basket of cookies. "So, Evelyn, you must be excited. Your only daughter walking down the aisle." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Excited, yes, but a little worried too." "Worried? Why?" Evelyn sighed. "There's something about that young man, Jason. He looks polished, but something doesn't sit right with me. And people like him, they don't see me. They see what they think I represent. Or worse, what they think I don't." Mrs. Henderson chuckled. "Well, if he's blind enough to underestimate you, that's his mistake." Evelyn nodded, but she was quiet for a long moment after. 2 days before the wedding, Jason met with his best man again at a bar downtown. "You're overthinking it," the friend said, sipping his beer. "So the old lady shows up. Big deal." Jason shook his head. "It is a big deal. Do you know how these things work? Image, perception. If she looks like she just walked in from the street, people will talk, they'll laugh, and I won't be the one they laugh at." His friend smirked. "You're really that worried about the mother-in-law?" Jason leaned forward. "Listen, this is my chance. My golden ticket. If I nail this, if I make everything spotless, I can leverage the network, the connections, whatever scraps of money Melissa's family still has. But if that woman walks in and ruins the vibe, people will remember it. They'll remember me for it." The friend laughed. "You're ruthless." Jason raised his glass with a smirk. "Focused." On the morning of the wedding, the venue was buzzing. White chairs lined the lawn, the sky stretched wide and clear, and guests began to arrive in sleek cars. Photographers moved quickly, snapping shots of designer shoes and tailored suits. At the gate, security checked the list of names. Jason had given them special instructions. If anyone suspicious comes by, anyone who doesn't look like they belong, you stop them. No exceptions. The guards nodded. They didn't know that suspicious meant one person in particular. And then she appeared. Evelyn walked slowly up the gravel path, holding her small gift, her dress simple but pressed. She smiled politely at the guards. "Good morning. I'm here for my daughter's wedding." One guard looked her up and down, then glanced at the clipboard. "Name?" "Evelyn Carter." His brows furrowed. "You're not on here." Evelyn's lips pressed together. "I'm her mother." The second guard stepped closer. "Ma'am, this is a private event. Guests only." At that moment, Jason appeared from inside the gates, his eyes narrowing. He marched over, his voice sharp enough to turn heads. "What's going on here?" The guard pointed at Evelyn. "She says she's the bride's mother." Jason's jaw clenched. He looked Evelyn up and down, from her old shoes to the box in her hands, and his voice rose loud enough for the crowd nearby to hear. "Are you serious? This is a wedding, not a street corner. Get her out of here before she embarrasses us all." Gasps rippled through the guests who overheard. Evelyn stood frozen, her gift still in her hands. Melissa, standing not far away, turned just in time to see her mother's face, hurt, pale, but silent. Evelyn didn't argue, she didn't plead. She simply nodded, turned, and began to walk away. Melissa's throat tightened, her eyes burning. She pushed through the crowd toward Jason. "Jason?" she hissed under her breath, her voice shaking. "Do you even know who you just yelled at?" Jason scoffed. "Yeah, some random woman trying to crash a wedding." Melissa's heart dropped. Her voice broke as she whispered, "That was my mother." Jason froze. For the first time that day, his smile faltered. And in that instant, everything began to unravel. The ceremony had barely begun when the whispers started. Guests leaned toward one another, murmuring about the scene they'd just witnessed at the gate. Some swore they'd seen Jason, shouting at a frail old woman. Others said it was just a misunderstanding, but everyone agreed on one thing: something didn't feel right. Melissa tried to keep her composure. She stood beside Jason, her hands trembling at her sides. Her smile stretched thin for the cameras. On the inside, she was shaking. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face, the quiet pain, the humiliation. Jason leaned close, whispering in her ear, "Relax. Don't let her ruin this day for you." Melissa pulled slightly away. Her voice was icy. "You just threw my mother out of our wedding, Jason." Jason's smile didn't falter, though his teeth were clenched. "I didn't know it was her. She looked like—" He cut himself off, but the damage was already done. "She looked like what?" Melissa asked sharply. Jason chuckled softly, pretending for the guests that they were sharing a sweet moment. "Let's not do this here, okay? We'll talk after." But Melissa wasn't sure she wanted to wait until after. The vows began, the pastor's voice steady and warm, but Melissa's mind wasn't there. Her eyes darted toward the road leading back to the parking lot. Her heart begged her mother to come back, to not let the day end with that wound. And then, as if her silent prayer had been heard, a sudden shift rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, gasps echoed. A line of black cars rolled up to the venue gates, their engines humming low and powerful. Doors opened, and men in tailored suits stepped out. At the center of it all, Evelyn Carter emerged. Gone was the frail old woman in sneakers and a sweater. She wore the same navy gown Melissa had seen earlier, but this time it was accompanied by a quiet authority, the kind that made people stand taller in her presence. She moved with calm, steady grace, as if she had all the time in the world, and yet the weight of her steps silenced the entire wedding. Jason's face drained of color. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath. Melissa's heart leapt into her throat. That's my mother, she whispered. Evelyn walked past the stunned security guards, who suddenly found themselves stepping aside without a word. She carried no anger on her face, only certainty. She reached the aisle, lifted her chin, and spoke loud enough for every guest to hear. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady. "Before this ceremony continues, there's something I need to say." The pastor looked uncertain, but the eyes of the crowd were glued to her. Phones began to rise discreetly. Cameras clicked. Jason tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. Someone stop her. She doesn't belong here." But Evelyn's gaze cut through him, calm, cold, unflinching. "Doesn't belong," she repeated softly, as if tasting the words. "That's an interesting thing to say to the mother of the bride." Gasps swept the audience. People began whispering frantically. Mother of the bride. That was her. He screamed at her. Jason's smile faltered, but he quickly adjusted it, holding up his hands. Wait, there's a misunderstanding here. I didn't know." Evelyn raised her hand, silencing him. "You didn't care to know, and that young man is far worse." Melissa felt her knees weaken. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at her mother, standing strong in front of everyone, no longer small or humiliated, but powerful. Evelyn turned back to the crowd. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Evelyn Carter. I have lived quietly for many years by choice, but once upon a time, my name was in every financial newspaper in this country. I built companies, I signed deals, and yes, I hold a fortune that many here could not imagine." The crowd erupted into more whispers. Phones lifted higher now, live streams already beginning. Jason shifted uncomfortably, his hands tightening at his sides. "This isn't the time for speeches," he said, his voice sharp, almost pleading. But Evelyn ignored him. She looked directly at Melissa. "I raised my daughter to value humility. I taught her that money doesn't define worth, that kindness matters more than wealth. I chose a modest life to show her what really counts. But today..." Evelyn's voice wavered slightly, then grew stronger. "I saw the man who claims to love her humiliate me for not looking the part, not even caring to ask who I was. And that tells me everything I need to know about his heart." Melissa's chest tightened. She turned to Jason, her voice breaking. "How could you do that to her, to my mom?" Jason's eyes darted around, desperate to save face. "Melissa, listen to me. She caught me off guard. She looked like someone who didn't belong. I made a mistake. That's all. Don't throw everything away over this." But Melissa shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with tears. "No, Jason. You didn't make a mistake. You revealed yourself." The guests murmured in agreement, some shaking their heads, others glaring at Jason openly. Evelyn took a step closer, her voice low but firm. "Melissa, you have a choice, and you need to make it with clear eyes." Melissa looked at Jason one last time. His mask of confidence was gone now, replaced by a frantic desperation. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. The diamond ring felt heavy, almost toxic on her finger. She slid it off and let it fall. The small sound of metal hitting the stone floor echoed louder than any words. Jason's face crumpled. "Melissa, don't do this. You don't understand." Melissa cut him off, her voice steady for the first time that day. "No, Jason, I finally do." Evelyn walked to her daughter's side, slipping an arm around her shoulders. Together, they faced the crowd, no longer victims of Jason's charade, but witnesses to his downfall. And as Jason stood frozen, the cameras caught everything: the humiliation, the exposure, the unraveling of a man who had built his castle on lies. The sound of the ring hitting the stone floor seemed to echo long after it had fallen. Guests stared in stunned silence, some covering their mouths, others already filming on their phones. Jason bent down quickly, scooping the ring into his palm as if saving it could still save everything. "Melissa," he pleaded, his voice low but frantic. "You can't do this. Not here. Not in front of everyone." Melissa looked at him with tear-filled eyes. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the silent crowd. "You humiliated my mother, Jason. On my wedding day. In front of everyone. How could I ever stand beside you after that? Jason forced a smile, desperate now, his words tumbling over each other. I didn't know. I thought she looked like... How was I supposed to guess she was your mother? Evelyn stepped forward, her presence commanding, her eyes sharp as steel. That's the point, Jason. You didn't care to know. You judged me the moment you saw me. You decided my worth based on shoes, on clothes, on a box in my hand, and now everyone sees who you truly are. A ripple of agreement moved through the crowd. Someone whispered, "What a disgrace," and another guest muttered, "Unbelievable." Jason turned in circles, panicked by the stares. You don't understand, he insisted. I love Melissa, that's what matters. Melissa shook her head. No, Jason. If you loved me, you would love the people who matter to me. You would have treated my mother with respect no matter what she was wearing, that's what matters. Jason's face flushed red. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice to a hiss. You're throwing away everything we built. You're making a mistake. Do you really want to embarrass yourself like this? Melissa's eyes narrowed, her voice steady now. You're the only embarrassment here. Gasps swept through the guests. A few even clapped quietly, unable to hold back. Jason's eyes darted around wildly, searching for an ally, someone, anyone to defend him. But no one moved. No one spoke. Evelyn crossed her arms, her voice calm but firm. Mr. Miller, consider this your last performance. Whatever mask you wore has slipped away. You wanted a fortune. You wanted status. Well, you've just lost everything on the day you thought you'd gained it. Jason's voice cracked as he tried one last time. Melissa, please, we can fix this. Just give me a chance. I made a mistake. Melissa cut him off, her voice breaking. No, Jason, you didn't make a mistake. You showed me the truth, and I can't marry a man who thinks kindness is weakness. She turned away from him, walking toward her mother. Evelyn wrapped her arm around her daughter's shoulders, steadying her as tears slipped down Melissa's cheeks. Together they walked past Jason, who stood frozen, clutching the ring like it was the last piece of a dream slipping away. The guests began to murmur louder, their voices blending into a storm. Some took out their phones to capture the moment. Others whispered about how quickly the story would spread. And it did. By the end of the day, clips of Jason yelling at Evelyn were everywhere, on social media, in group chats, and within hours on the evening news. Groom humiliates bride's mother, not knowing she's a billionaire, the headlines screamed. Jason's name, once unknown, became infamous overnight. His business associates cut ties immediately. Creditors came calling. The same people who once laughed at his jokes now refused to take his calls. In less than a week, he was ruined. Meanwhile, Melissa and Evelyn sat together in the quiet of Evelyn's modest living room, far away from the chaos. The wedding dress was still packed in its box, never worn. Melissa sipped tea with shaky hands, her voice soft. Mum, I thought he loved me. I thought I finally found someone who saw me for who I was, not for money or status. Evelyn squeezed her daughter's hand gently. Sweetheart, men like Jason don't know how to love. They know how to want. And when they don't get what they want, the mask slips. You should be proud. You saw the truth before it was too late. Melissa leaned into her mother, her tears soaking into Evelyn's shoulder. I'm so sorry I doubted you. I let myself drift so far away because I was embarrassed of how simple you lived. But now I understand. You were teaching me the whole time. Money doesn't matter. Clothes don't matter. What matters is the heart. Evelyn smiled softly. Exactly. And now you know. You're stronger for it. Melissa wiped her tears, a small spark of resolve in her eyes. I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to be afraid of what people think of us. I want to live with honesty. Like you taught me. Evelyn kissed her daughter's forehead. Then you'll be fine, my love. Better than fine. As for Jason, he tried to claw his way back. He sent messages, long apologies full of excuses, claiming pressure had gotten to him, that he didn't mean it, that they could start over. Melissa read them all in silence, then finally typed a reply. Love doesn't look down, Jason. And neither do I. She hit send and blocked his number. Jason was left with nothing. No bride, no fortune, no reputation. His downfall was complete. Melissa, on the other hand, found peace she hadn't felt in years. She walked with her mother in the park one sunny morning, laughing softly as they shared stories of the past. Evelyn's hand was warm in hers, and for the first time in a long time, Melissa felt like everything was exactly as it should be. And that was the real wedding gift. The truth, the bond between mother and daughter, and the strength to choose respect over riches, love over lies. Because the quietest people often hold the most power, and those who look down on others always end up falling the hardest.